ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Zombie Train. This is episode number 332. We are one episode away from 333, which is a route review. So if you want me to review your route, get in touch with me on Discord, and I will be happy to next week. So, this week we have a question from 844 Steam Fan. It is about the Black Hills Central. They write, number 110-2662T, number 7-280, and number 63 GP9 in Hill City, South Dakota on the Black Hills Central ? That's not a very explanatory question, but I assume that means what did we do with them, because that's the typical question that comes with them. One clarification though, number 7 is not a 280, number 7 is a 262. A relatively old one at that, and kind of an anemic one. And my initial complaints may clue you in to the fact that these engines that were on the Black Hills Central were a lifetime of frustration wrapped into some relatively small packages, and I did not like them. Now, I thought the original question, I glanced at it, I thought it was about the Black River Railroad that's over in New Jersey, and I was ready to gush about number 60, but that is not what you asked. You asked about these pieces of junk that are in the middle of nowhere, or were in the middle of nowhere, that, like, I knew about. There's the Black Hills Central. It's like the only passenger railroad in South Dakota. It's got these really cool tank engines. Nobody told me that it was, like, 20 miles and a mountain pass away from anything. And by 20 miles, I mean, like... Actually, I just looked on the map. It's pretty much exactly 20 miles. Anyway, I thought I had undershot it. So, it's in the middle of nowhere, South Dakota. Like, totally over on the west side of South Dakota. And it's in the middle of a national forest. And it's surrounded by gigantic mountains. Oh my god. Getting these things out of there was an exercise in immense frustration. Because how do you even do that when you are so short on vehicles? These were the kind of things that we almost said, nah, we're not touching them, we're just going to leave them there. Especially the ones that were in pieces. And we would have, but our building program and rebuilding program was not getting up to speed. And we had some extra manpower, and it's just like, well, this seems like it's a good idea on the face of it. If we get these engines out, they'll be fairly useful. They weren't, spoiler. But getting them out, oh my god. First thoughts were, if we can get our hands on enough gas or diesel, we can use some of these trucks that are designed for moving heavy vehicles, or, large objects, like if you have to move a building, we can do that. Okay. And then we'll take that over the mountain. We won't have to worry about traffic, so, that isn't so bad. We also realize that if we run them out to the end of the line, we're a little bit closer to anything. And we only had to take one highway. So we decided to embark upon that. We got one engine up to the end of the line. It was the Malay. One of the Malays. It was 110. And then we were like, well, why are we driving these individually? We have, like, junk that we need to bring. So we went back, we loaded a bunch of stuff on flat cars, and then we ran 110 back up the line. And this is where it started to become apparent that, yeah, these engines are great for running this relatively short line. It's only like 10 miles or something. It's a tough line, but they really don't have a lot of capacity. And that's when I started to have my doubts. It's like, okay, we've got a railroad that goes from nowhere to nowhere, up a hell of a hill, and we're running these engines that are tank engines that were designed for small logging runs. Even 7, the tender is pretty small. And the stuff that we decided to move with number 7 was too much for number 7. And something happened. I don't know what exactly. I was only told that 7 suffered a catastrophic failure, and they had to drag it up the rest of the mountain with 110. When number 7 was finally lifted from the Black Hills and got to a place where they could work on it, apparently people were kind of appalled that they decided to move it in the case that it, in the situation that it was. So I assume it was something with the running gear. Not totally sure. So between number 7 breaking down, 110 feeling adequate for 10 miles, but not much over that, 108 being in about 1 million pieces, 104 being also on a similar level to 110, except not as strong, and then 103 being in about 1 million pieces. It was a lot of effort for not much reward. We got 2 piecemeal engines, 1 broken engine, and 2 engines that, on the face of it, couldn't do a whole lot. We ended up sending 104 and 103 when it was operating to yards to do switching duties because we could not find a better use for them. 110 and 109 handled some inter-yard stuff, but it was places that were relatively close together. We migrated them about as far east as we could. And yeah, it became apparent that these were not ideal locomotives. Now, getting them over the mountain, though, that's the real trick. So, we tried to get some trucks, and we did manage to truck, 7, 104, and parts of 109. And then we couldn't get our hands on more gas, so 110 was stuck there with parts of 109 and 103, which, like I said, was in 1 million pieces. We didn't use the diesels for this at all, because it would have been a waste. What we ended up doing, and this was not my idea, but I did support it when it was brought to me, we built sleds for these things. Sleds and trailers, sort of. They had to have wheels so they could have brakes, but they were mostly sleds. And we used a log hauler. I don't remember which one. We had to ship it in from quite a distance. We had to bring it in by rail, drive it over the mountain, that took, over a day, from what I recall. Then hitch it up to one of these kludged together sleds, and have it drag an engine over the mountain, which took more than a day, because that thing does not move quickly at all. It moves at a walking pace, so to cover the 20 miles as the crow flies would have taken 10 hours. And it was not as the crow flies, it was over a mountain pass. So, it wasn't the easiest thing to do. We did manage to do it, though. We got all of those engines and all of those pieces together. And then they were shipped off to, I think, Cheyenne initially to get work done. And they took a liking to 104 to be a shop switcher, because we were stealing engines from them left and right. And then we stole that engine from them to be a switcher at a larger yard. I think that one actually went west. That one probably went west. I think it was working in, Sacramento or San Francisco or something. Or Oakland. And then The other one went east, and then the two Malays, they went east, and we started using them to run between Rhode Island and between Quonset and I think Worcester or something like that. They did a decent job of doing that. It was a little long for them, and they had to make a lot of water stops, but they did it. And then 104, they were sent to a yard. I think it might have been Selkirk, but it could have been, but I don't think it was Selkirk. It was one of these larger yards. I was kind of, this is getting towards the end. I know I say this a lot, but I was kind of hands-off at this point. Moving these locomotives around was kind of a, well, where do we need them thing. And, yeah, the engines, I mean, once they got running, they were good runners. They ran well. They were decent locomotives. They just weren't great for what we needed them to do. And there was some talk of, well, if we're foresting, then we can take these engines out for them. We'll use them for their original purpose. And I was like, yeah, but one, how much foresting do we do? Logging. How much logging do we do? And two, we have like 1 million shays. We have so many shays and Heislers and Climaxes and like other smaller logging engines that are a lot less hungry than these gigantic tank engines are. And also number 7. That's right, number 7. Number 7, we ended up fitting with a larger tender, and I don't know what happened to its original tender, but oh wait, no, that's right, now I remember. Okay, so there was a spare tender in whatever city, Hill City or something that the Black Hills is, was based out of. And we were like, what's that tender? Grab that tender. And so we ended up bringing the tender down. I think we strapped it to 7's tender, and from then, they never got separated. We decided, somehow, the guys at Cheyenne must have got bored, and they decided that the best course of action for number 7 was to get that engine more range. And to get that engine more range, what they did was they converted the entire tender, the entire regular tender, to coal. And they took this other tender, which was like a slopeback tender, and turned the entire thing into a water tank. So it looked like the dumbest version of the Flying Scotsman that you can imagine. This 262 with a massive balloon stack hauling 2 tenders, one of which doesn't even belong to it. And that became their pet project. And they would use that thing for like, oh, do we have to go to one of the other cities in the region? We're going to take this engine. It was a terrible idea, but they just kept it because I couldn't find a better use for the thing. With 2 tenders, it was way too clunky to use on a relatively shorter run, and if we wanted to convert it back down to 1, it would have taken a lot of effort, and they probably would have been annoyed. Not that that really mattered, but they would have been. And so, and then we would have had a still relatively anemic 260 that now didn't have the range to go anywhere. So, you have to remember that so many of the runs that we were making were way longer than these engines were designed to go. It's the kind of thing where, a lot of these steam engines, they would just stay on their home road, and they wouldn't go further than that. And even if they had long runs to do, they would hot swap engines sometimes or whatever. The Zometran Incorporated, that was not the case in the slightest. We were like, all right, you're gonna go from New York to Denver. Have fun. And they would just have to stop and get water and coal on the way, and change crews, maybe. So, obviously number 7 did none of that, but it was like, we're going to go from Cheyenne to Denver. A little long for that engine. Just a little. I mean, with the 2 tenders, yeah, it did it. And they didn't have to stop again and again and again, but anyway. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Remember, if you have a question, you can post it down below. And this is the Admiral, signing off.